You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are just diehard Packers fans that love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and nonsense. We're sticking with real football. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason. Here we go. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to that YouTube channel, Packers Talk YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button for us. Greatly appreciate it. Goes a long way, helps us out. And we certainly love all of our listeners and subscribers. Welcome, welcome. This evening, going to get into some rumors. It's that time of year, right? It's about all we got is just rumors upon rumors upon rumors. The Packers will be in every conversation, I promise you. They were even in the Luka Doncic conversation from what I hear. But anyway, still a jaded Mavericks fan over here. Forgive me. And then we're going to go through our favorite rumors. We're going to talk a little bit about who we think might be the most impactful addition, position. What do you think this offseason? And then, of course, a flyby of the draft class on defense. Did a little bit of a flyby of the offense last week. Going to have some fun pointing out a few characters this week, and then we've got the Combine coming next week. But first, before we get started, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee for direct links to specific Packers game tickets. Go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Good evening, Tim. How we doing, sir?
Good evening, Miles. I am doing okay. Kind of in that little in-between state. Season's over, and we're not quite at the Combine yet. We're getting close. Next week will be much, much closer, and so we're kind of in between free agency, the pre-free agency, pre-draft stuff. Very quiet around the Packers, very quiet around the league, but that's all going to change really soon. So, yeah, starting to kind of get caught up on the free agents about to, hit the market and looking ahead to the draft and what the Packers prospects are going to be. How are you?
Yes, sir. I am. I'm staying warm. It's about to get cold down here in Texas. We don't do single digits down here.
Ooh.
Wisconsin's weather got drunk again. They're in our yard. You guys get your weather out of here. It's not what we do. But I'm going to stay warm. We're going to have fun. And next week we got a little Combine action. I actually, I don't know how everybody feels about this. I really am a nerd. I will sit down and I will actually watch the Combine. I don't have anybody that I'm specifically chasing after. I don't have any event that I'm really, itching to see. I like sitting down and watching these guys. It's almost like a public job interview, and maybe that's kind of a creeper way to put it. I don't know, but it's fascinating to me to watch these guys interview for a job, who's doing what, what does it all look like? Most recently, not even that recently, but one that I remember very well was 2019 when DK Metcalf ran his 40, and he was just emotional after that. Cause I think he surprised himself, But yeah, it's just kind of fun to watch these guys do these things. They've been working really hard, training for this day. So I kind of nerd out on it. I really enjoy it. So I'll enjoy next week watching the scouting combine. Other than that, man, just fast and furious, living the life of a dad and an entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff. It's never a dull moment down here.
No, you're always busy. You always got something going on.
Always. But yeah, so right now we've had no shortage of rumors going around. I think the flavor of the day has turned back to Jair. But it is kind of a fun time of year to speculate. Everything's a possibility. This time last year, there was a lot of chatter about Xavier McKinney. And I think we were all surprised when that came to fruition because we don't usually get what we want.
Nope.
So yeah, I mean, what's your favorite rumor so far, man? Like, there's plenty going around. Where's your attention?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I'm not sure I really believe that any of them are going to happen. Like, I think, Myles Garrett would be the dream possibility, but I don't think there's any way the Packers are going to pay whatever the price is to acquire him and then probably give him a new contract after that as well. But there's a lot of names out there. Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. It's not so much the specific player, but having looked at the free agent market, it is very underwhelming. There is not a whole lot of guys that really excite me where you look at it and be like, wow, that's the guy, like you mentioned, Xavier McKinney. Last year, every Packers fan wanted Xavier McKinney. Didn't think it was actually going to happen. We didn't think he'd actually even get to the market, but the Giants somehow let that happen. And
it's
then
actually really funny how that gets totally overshadowed by the Saquon Barkley thing.
Yeah, how do they let both of those guys leave for nothing?
At least keep one of them.
Yeah, amazing. But there's not a guy where I'm like, that's the perfect Packers fit. Pay him whatever he wants. He's the guy this year. Like, there's some guys that could help them, absolutely. But it's not a very good free agent market. So that kind of makes me think like this is the year to get aggressive with a trade. And I'm not saying, Myles Garrett's going to probably cost a lot if he gets moved.
Right.
Maybe Max Crosby's a little less, and maybe Max Crosby can finagle his way to Green Bay because he's got connections to Bisaccia and Keyshawn Nixon, Josh Jacobs. But I'm not sure they want to trade him either. Like, we haven't seen anything where that he even wants to be traded. So there's a lot going on with those moves with Myles Garrett or Max Crosby to even happen. But I'm just saying, I think this might be a year to get aggressive in looking for other guys, maybe guys that we don't even know as publicly are available. Where Goody just goes out and, finds a guy. There's somebody he wants, or there's a situation with a new coach or a new GM coming in where they're going to make some changes and they're not, a player that's not going to fit there or that they don't want to pay. And Goody's aggressive and go gets him because they have some cap space. There's just not a whole lot of guys out there in free agency that are worth spending that cap space on. So this might be the year. And I know they haven't done it in the past. So they're going to have to do it to prove it sort of thing. Right. And it's still unlikely that Goody makes a big move as far as the trade goes, but this might be that year just because it's not a great free agent class. And I'm wondering too, free agent wise, if they almost go like last year, they went quality, like they signed the best safety. They signed one of the best running backs that was available.
Yeah.
Great moves. This year might be a quantity sort of thing. Like, maybe they're not paying guys at the top of the market, but they're going to pay several guys who they think can come in and
4 instead of 2.
Yeah, right. And you're not signing the number one cornerback or a guy who's going to be a number one cornerback. You're signing a guy who you hope is like a solid number 2, a part of the, starting nickel package, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you're taking a chance on somebody who's coming off an injury, which they typically don't want to do, but maybe you get them at the right price. But it might be a quantity over a quality sort of free agency. But that's the trade market is maybe not for a specific person, but I think it might be their year to kind of be a little more aggressive and hunting for those trades just because I'm not seeing a whole lot out there in free agency. And this is a team that has some cap space and they need, as Goody himself said, they need to start taking some steps to be a contender, right? And you can be aggressive. You can spend some of your draft picks or whether it's a player for player trade, whatever it may be, but that could be the route they go to improve this team. There's also going to be some guys that get cut loose that we're not seeing get cut loose yet. That improves the free agent market, but it's just right now, I don't know who you get super aggressive for, right? Like, so that's why I'm thinking it makes more sense to potentially go out there and hunt for trades.
Yeah, no, I like that approach. I think that that's something that is maybe more on the table because we haven't heard much about it. I mean, that typically is how the Packers end up working. The Julius Peppers signing was one that really illustrated that well. You don't hear anything about something and then boom, it happens. And a lot of ways the Josh Jacobs signing was like that, but I think that was more of a kind of a reactionary decision to not landing Jones and that, going south. But yeah, so there hasn't been a lot of rumors about trades. There's certainly been the speculation about Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, but I think that I would put that in the category of the way Packers fans were talking about McKinney last year. It's like sort of an obvious, yeah, we'd love that, but probably not going to happen. As far as stuff coming out of Lambeau and just around Green Bay, to lead to that kind of an idea, you got nothing. We've obviously got Bob Domofsky out here talking about old 2-3, but come to find, he's really just kind of bringing information back up from Goody's end of season press conference. There's really nothing new. There's no new information for us to play with right now. So I wouldn't put it past him to do a trade. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that a lot like the way they traded Rasul Douglas. I don't know that it would be necessarily because they want the player to exit as much as they want to maximize their return for their player. And I think that right now maybe that's a position that you're still in with Jair Alexander, and you can still get a decent return for him that you would feel good with. But yeah, and we'll look a little bit here at the free agent list in a second. I just don't, I'm kind of with you on not really seeing a whole lot there to be excited about. But as far as where we are right now, all the rumors going on around the Packers, I will say that my favorite is still Davante Adams coming home. And I am rooting so hard for Kay Adams, as I don't know who made her the unofficial recruit for the Packers, but I'm totally cool with it. Yeah, get Tay home, somehow work out some sort of sweetheart Luka Doncic deal for Max Crosby. I don't know if it's obvious how jaded I am still about that. And then, yeah, I think if you can nail those two things, man, that's like a dream for this offseason, because then obviously you're going to still add in the draft. But, man, you bring those two veterans in, oof, that's getting my blood moving. I'll tell you that much. So, yeah, I would say the 17 one is my favorite. I think it makes the most sense, and then you got him trolling a little bit, showing the picture of his green and yellow shoes in his Instagram. And, there's a lot of reciprocal stuff going on there. And I think really the only thing that would maybe lead me to think that wouldn't be, 17 coming home wouldn't be as much of on the table as when Goody was talking again in his end of season press conference about not bringing in somebody who's on necessarily the end of their career. Now, I don't think Davante would appreciate it very much if we were in the same room and referred to him being at the end of his career. I get the vibe he doesn't believe that. And what's the end of a career, right? Do you believe that Davante's got 3 more seasons left that are worth paying for? If so, maybe that means he's not at the end of his career. I don't know. But otherwise, it seems like a good fit. And that one's still my favorite rumor so far. It's got a good combination of something I can be excited about, but also something that, has real potential, I think. I kind of like what's going on here in the comments. Our buddy Daryl here says Chase Young would be a great addition. Now, that hasn't been something that has been rumored very much. But I got a little love in my heart for Chase Young, man. I thought he was going to be an absolute animal in the NFL. I've been a little underwhelmed.
He's had a lot of injury. Yeah, I mean, he's a free agent, and he's coming off a year with the Saints where he was okay.
Yeah.
He's more of a pressures than sacks kind of guy, which maybe kind of fits in with some of the other Packers. He's still fairly young, but he's just had a ton of injuries, and I guess it's possible at the right price, but it's a matter of do they think he can stay healthy? And I think he was fairly healthy. I'm not sure if he played every game for the Saints, but I think he was close enough where he had a healthy year. But do they want to invest in somebody that's gone through a bunch of injuries like he has throughout his career and has underperformed? I guess it depends on what his price is. He would make some sense to me. But I think, the flip side of that is there is some major risk there because of, his availability. So I don't know. I think it would have to obviously be at the right price, because I don't think they want to pay somebody a big money deal, long-term deal that's that's had the injury issues.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to know where he's at health-wise. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for his years in Washington because it was kind of a dysfunctional organization that seems to have corrected its ship at this point. Yeah, I'd be interested in that. At the right price, that I think would be a fun addition. Our buddy Matthew Tannen here says, any word on free agents coming or visiting Lambeau this year? Man, I don't think we get that kind of information yet.
No, not until I think March 12th. I think is the
is it the
year.
12th?
Something
Okay.
like that.
So
it's around that time, 15th. I might be off by a few days, but it's around that time. That's when free agency starts. So,
yeah.
You might get some rumors coming out of the combine because they all tamper and talk to free agents and all that. So maybe there's some rumors that come out around the combine, but yeah, like we won't know a whole lot until well into March. All
right, there you go, Matthew. That's what Tim thinks right now. We need like a segment. What does Tim think? No, I feel like Matthew's in here asking what Tim thinks a lot. I like that. But yeah, so I think you're probably right there. The combine does seem to be a time where conversations happen. Usually get a little bit of action coming out of that. But and I said this before. I did not realize how much it can vary how teams control information leaving their franchise. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I was doing the work here in the DFW area with the Shrine Bowl for Cheesehead TV, shout out. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I could walk right up to Thomas Dimitrov watching practice, no problem. Like a former GM of the Falcons. I did it twice by accident, and I couldn't find somebody with a G on their shirt or their hat. Short of the coaches that I could see on the field. We shout out to Coach Duggan, new linebacker coach. He was out there at the Shrine Bowl coaching them up. And then Coach Eddie Gordon as well, assistant O-line coach. He was out there. Aside from those guys, I could not find people. And I know they were there. The players were meeting with them. So we know they were there. They are very elusive. And then when I did get a chance to ask Coach Duggan if I could get an interview with him, he actually had to get permission from the Packers, to which they said no.
So, of course. Of course.
So, just to give you guys a little bit of insight, if you are getting information from the Packers this time of year, you're probably not.
Right. It's not true. They keep it very tight, and that goes back to Ted Thompson. So we're not going to hear a lot. But just to clear up some of the things in the comments, March 12th is when free agency starts. There is like a 2-day negotiation window when all the deals get done. So that's March 10th that starts. But you can't actually have visits or anything like that until March 12th. And that's when you can actually sign the contracts, though most of them get signed or agreed to before March 12th.
Right.
So it's really March 10th and then officially March 12th.
Yeah. So you talk on March 10th, you sign papers on March 12th.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's coming. It's right around the corner. We'll have the combine, and then free agency will smack us right in the face. So one thing at a time. But there's not a lot of information flowing right now, and I did get to experience firsthand why. Right? Because the Packers are really, really tight, and that's okay. Other teams, they prefer a little bit more communication. Jerry Jones famously says there's no such thing as bad press, or any attention's good attention, something along those lines. But yeah, so take it for what it's worth this time of year. There's just going to be a lot of thoughts, and I think give Packers Twitter some credit. This is a time of year where Packers Twitter usually gets over the bullseye. I get not all the time, but they were over the bullseye with McKinney. There's some other examples throughout the year where Packers Twitter has figured out some moves, and those moves came to fruition. So, I'd say right now, one of the things that maybe Packers Twitter might be closest on is Max Crosby. I think between the recruiting from Josh Jacobs, Crosby's desire to go somewhere to contend for a championship, the Packers' ability to actually move and pay him, I think it all comes together well. Something could happen, especially if you got other players involved, maybe like Jair, where again, this is the one where you and I kind of disagree, where most of Packers media has already assumed Jair's gone. I do not. I think he's still in Green Bay. But if there were a desire, to move the player, I would think that would be a good transaction, right? Include him somehow in a trade for Crosby to lessen the need for draft picks on the table. But yeah, I think that it won't take long, right? Like you said, you get to the scouting combine, you get these conversations happening, and then a couple of weeks later, some things really start to fly. I don't know. What do you think? If Max Crosby's going to move, let's say Max Crosby moves. Do you think they do that before the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if he's going to move, and you can put Myles Garrett and some of the other bigger names in there too, I think that's probably going to happen before the draft, because you're going to get in the free agency and teams are going to want to know, like, are we getting this guy? Like, if you're negotiating with the Raiders for Crosby, you're going to want to know, because if you're not getting him, you're going to have a fallback option. And if you can't do that until, like the draft time, and you make you run out of guys. Like, everybody else is going to be signing. So if there's, your plan B is going to be gone real quick in free agency, unless you just say, you know what, we want Max Crosby. He's our guy. And if we don't get him, we're fine not bringing anybody else in, or we'll just draft somebody. Maybe, it takes that long to make a trade. But yeah, I would think if Max Crosby's getting traded, and I'm not convinced that he is, but if he does get traded, I would think it's going to be around the start of free agency. I guess it's possible it drags out to the draft, but that whoever would make that trade, whether it was Green Bay or another team, you're taking a risk in that you're missing out on these other guys. Like, if you don't end up with Max Crosby, you don't end up with anybody else, then what? Like, you're sitting there empty-handed. So I would think the team trading for him wants to have a pretty clear idea whether or not they can get him by the start of free agency.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and something that the Packers have done pretty well. Although, I guess I don't know if this is true for last season. I have to look at it. Goot, the last few years, really, there's a lot of examples of this each year that he's been around. Likes to attack a position at both the free agency and the draft. We've seen him do this several times. Getting the Smith brothers and and drafting Rashawn Gary, and there's, like I said, we've done these examples before, but you can go back and look at it. He's got a history of signing guys that he intends to go after in the draft. So I would look to his free agent additions as an indicator of where he's looking in the draft. And I guess there was a few offensive linemen last year that he added in free agency. They weren't big, but they were offensive linemen that he had, Dillard, and was there one more? It might have been just Dillard.
Yeah, it was just Dillard, I think. Yeah.
Which Dillard wasn't a big one, but it's still aligned with that pattern. Go off and get a guy, and then you end up drafting, the same position high in the draft. So that would be probably the first thing to look at as some kind of indication of their plan, is like, who do they start targeting in free agency? And what does that look like? Obviously, the safety position, you go off and get McKinney, and then you go off and get 3 safeties in the draft. So, there's definitely some strong indicators there, actions speaking louder than words.
He tells you where he thinks he has a need.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And in a lot of ways, they've been very effective at addressing those things one position at a time. They really attacked the receiver position a few years ago. They really attacked the safety position last year. They really attacked the linebacker position a few years ago, the D-line. There's been some positions they've gone after, and it hasn't always worked. It's not going to work perfectly every time, but I think that's why you see the strategy you see. You throw a few free agents or a few veterans at a position, and you throw some premium investment picks at a position. All of a sudden, hopefully that's a nice mixture that can create some success. So I kind of like that approach. I think they've done fairly well with it, but I would say, going back to the receiver group, I think, you're missing that veteran presence there, and you'd like to see somebody come into that group that can really help those guys grow and maximize their potential. But the edge group is one for me that I'm watching, and obviously We're talking about Max Crosby. We're talking about some of these other guys, but in the draft, it's going to be an interesting draft for that too. I think there's some good potential. We're going to get there here in a second to go over the real preview of the defense, but I think there is some good potential at the pass rusher position that's going to be available for the Packers all throughout the draft, right? It's not like there's just a couple guys at the top that are studs, and then after that, it's sort of ho-hum. It really feels like there's some decent guys available. And I wonder if they would do something like sign a Josh Sweat and also invest, maybe a second-round pick at edge rusher and not a first-round pick. But something like that kind of a combination of moves I could really see those guys doing this offseason, because that is one I like to be a little bit of a contrarian sometimes, and poke at it. But, the pass rush was important this year, and it wasn't there when it was needed. Yes, by the numbers, they were okay. But I think it was 4 games that they got the majority of those sacks in. You got to do better than that. Yeah. You want a reliable pass rush. And, the other trend that we talk about Goody doing is, attacking positions in the draft that are deeper than others, right? So when you've got a ridiculously deep receiver group, you can probably count on having a receiver come out of the draft. Stuff like that. Now this year is interior D lineman. I would be shocked if they come out of this draft with any less than 3 interior defensive linemen. They're too good. They're too big.
That's a hot take.
And he's a Ted Thompson guy. Ted said they don't make them that big. Take them when you can get them, because they don't make them that. They don't make them that big very often. Something like that. This is a really unique class, man. They just don't usually get this big. Guys are big, but you don't usually have a class full of 320 plus pounders that can all move.
Yeah, they're big, and I think a lot of them are gonna test very well at the combine and pro days.
Yeah.
So, I think what was the stat? There were 25 defensive tackles that were invited to the combine last year. This year, there's 41. That's a pretty big jump, and you can
numbers don't lie.
Dane Brugler came out with his top 100 last week. It's loaded with defensive tackles and edge rushers, and I think there's some that he just couldn't put them all in there. You run out of slots. And Daniel Jeremiah, you want to go to the draft experts. He's another one that's raving. It is very deep in defensive linemen, particularly defensive tackle, but there's some good edge rushers as well. It lines up well. I know they have some guys, but obviously Kenny Clark's coming off a poor year. Wyatt's kind of been hit or miss. He hasn't fully developed. I thought Carl Brooks was better as a rookie than he was in his second year. And then when you factor in Kenny Clark, he just signed the extension, but I know they can get out of it a little easier after next season. And if he doesn't improve, they probably will get out of it. Wyatt's going into the last year of his contract potentially, unless they pick up the 5th-year option or sign him. So there's a contract, there's performance issues there. It's a need now, but it's also down the road need. And we know how the Packers like to get ahead of things. And there's just so many good players there, and it's deep where you can take one in the 2nd, 3rd, into the 4th round, feel pretty damn good about it. That's going to be a guy that's going to contribute for you. So yeah, it's a loaded defensive tackle class. And I know everybody, all Packer fans, we want a pass rusher and edge rusher, but you can get a guy that can pass rush coming up the middle. That's huge.
Big deal.
Look at the 2 teams that played in the Super Bowl: Jalen Carter and Milton Williams for the Eagles, and Chris Jones for the Chiefs. You get a guy like that, that's a game wrecker, and that will make your edge guys better. So,
absolutely, it makes your secondary better too.
Yep, I expect them to take a defensive tackle pretty early in the draft, whether that's 1st round or 2nd day, whatever it may be. But
I think the value is just too strong.
Exactly, there's too many guys that to pass up, and we'll see once they test and once they measure how many hit all the thresholds that the Packers look for. But I think it's going to be quite a few. I think it's going to be a deeper class. It is a deep class, but when we start crossing guys off because of their size or because of their testing numbers, because the Packers have those those measurables that they look for, those minimals that they look for, I still think it's going to be a pretty big list of guys that are going to fit for Green Bay. So there's just too many to pass up. They're going to have to take one or two of them.
We're going to get into some names here in a little bit. Before we get there, we want to cover another segment. We're kind of dancing around it because a few of these guys and a few of these positions apply here. But before we do our preview of the defenders of this draft class, let's talk about impact. And this is where I think the conversation can maybe get more productive this time of year, whether it's Jair Alexander and is he going to be here or is he not, whether it's Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or Devontae Adams or, T. Higgins, who or what position is going to be the most impactful to make an addition this offseason? Because, you can make the arguments about what'll happen with Jair Alexander. All right, well, if he hasn't played in that many games, is that really an impactful thing? Right? I mean, maybe we're talking about something that's not even impactful, and then do we need to be talking about the O-line? Do we need to be talking about the D-line? Do we need to be talking about the pass rushers? And are we talking about from a trade, free agency, or draft perspective, right? There's so many different ways you can add, and adding a rookie is not the same thing as adding a veteran, obviously. So, I mean, and then trading, you have to go more capital than you do if you're signing a free agent, which does matter to Goot in the front office. So that's where, all right, well, if it's an edge rusher, are you going to get a Max Crosby when you could just get a Josh Sweat? And what do you think, is – so what do you think, man? Where is the position or where is the place, position or player that they can make the most impact this offseason?
I think we're going to agree, and I don't want to steal your thunder on it, but to me, it's pass rush. And, you can take that
dude.
Into the trenches, so we can include O-line and D-line, but because if you look at the team that just won the Super Bowl, you want to be really good and really deep on the offensive line and on the defensive line. And so for me, it's pass rush. And whether that's a tackle, an edge rusher, both, that would be great. Go get the pass rushers. And if you sign one in free agency, cool. Go draft another one early because you still don't have enough. Like, I just want relentless pass rush. Like, if Rashawn Gary's got to come out for a breather, I don't want to, then go and we're hoping that Kingsley and Barre or Brenton Cox, I want to raise the floor so that, all right, Gary comes out, but the next guy coming in is really good rushing too.
Yes.
Just build that depth so there's no breaks for the offensive line, right? Everybody can give you a rush. Everybody can put pressure on the quarterback. I think corner's a big need too, but I'd rather have those pass rushers because I think that will make your corners better. And I think they can find decent enough corners where they don't need a number one, Patrick Surtain kind of corner.
Right.
I think they can get decent guys at corner. At pass rush, it changes everything, how you play the position. It'll make Edgerrin Cooper better. And he's a freak, as we know, but it'll improve his game and you'll be able to do more things with him.
Totally.
So to me, it is pass rush all day. Just give me those guys, right? And I like Josh Sweat, and I'm not basing that just on how, just on what he did in the Super Bowl, and he was really good in the Super Bowl. But I think he's one of those guys. He's a freak athletically. They had him standing up more this year with Fangio's scheme, but he's probably a better fit putting his hand in the ground like he would be for the Packers. He's got good length. He might not come in and get 15 sacks, but he might get 10 sacks and a ton of pressures and open it up for the other guys as well. Whether it's him or someone else, and I'm not going to say Myles Garrett or Max Crosby because I really don't think that's realistic, for the Packers to go make I would take either one of those guys. Don't get me wrong. I would love it and, be over the moon about it, but I don't think they're realistic. So if the realistic options, if it's Josh Sweat, great. Someone else, cool. But the best option is to sign a guy and then draft another rusher early in the draft. Just have the depth there because you're going to have injuries as well. But you want the game records, but you also want to improve the floor. You want to raise that bar, right? So that it's not Enigbari or Wooden or Brenton Cox. Not that those guys are bad players, but make them have to earn their job. and try to get better than them so that your depth and your rotations improve so much so that there's not this huge step down when Gary's got to come off the field or Wyatt's got to come off the field. That to me is the position. It's pass rush number one. And there's other, places we can go, receiver, offensive line, corner, and all that. But to me,
they're all impactful. But what's most impactful?
The pass rush is the most impactful for this team.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think I can agree without being repetitive. I can probably try to build on this and say that just the D line in general is going to be the most impactful, which includes pass rush in this defense to me. One thing that stands out is one of the first moves they made was getting a new defensive line coach. I think the coach that they got, he seems like a pretty sharp option. Seems like a guy who can get the most out of his guys. And I think that's exactly what this front office expects with that move, right? They're looking at this going, you've got a treasure trove of premium picks sitting here. I mean, you got one of the guys is literally nicknamed Hercules. What are we doing? How are you ineffective with all of these guys? When literally the year before, all of them looked better. You know what I mean? All of them looked better. They all, I'm not going to use all the names. They all looked better under Joe Barry. That's not good. That's not good. If you're taking a step backwards when you went from Joe Barry to Jeff Hafley, something wrong happened. And I think that's what they looked at here. They looked at it and said, all right, well, why doesn't this work? And, whatever the answer to that question is, it didn't work. And so you find someone new. And I think with a full year of hindsight and probably some input from the players, certainly some input from the defensive coordinator, you could have a better understanding of what you're looking for from that position. So the fact that they went out and they got a new D-line coach, I think is a big sign that is an area they believe needs to be fixed, but maybe not necessarily with a whole load of players. Now, I also think that there's a couple things going on there, right? Like something needs to be fixed now, but also you have to be bolstered for the future. Kenny Clark's not a part of the future, right? Like you just got a third contract. You're not getting a fourth one, right? Unless he turns into an all-pro next season or, whatever. He's not getting a fourth one. So you definitely have to already start to look at who is coming in behind him and how. And then I think you have to make kind of an assessment on TJ Slayton, right? If you bring him back or not. I think if you don't bring him back, and you probably don't because of this draft class. I mean, TJ Slayton's your big guy. He's huge. He's a monster. So you need another monster. There's plenty of them, all on rookie contracts.
Right.
And they love their rookie contracts. So that's where I think, and I like TJ Slayton, but I think that the way that this draft class is set up, you probably don't need to bring him back. You got your veteran leadership there in Kenny Clark, whether he played well or not. We know that they love him in the locker room and they believe in his leadership. So you've got that guy, you got that presence. You need a big monster, maybe two in the middle. I think in this draft, they come out of it with three of them. And maybe you expect two of them to actually play kind of like they did with the safeties last year. But yeah, so I do. I think it's the D-line group that's the most impactful. And, not to take anything away from Cooper DeJean and the Eagles secondary. They're good. They certainly are. But the monsters up front and that Eagles defense are what made them really shine, right? That's what helped that secondary really play well and dominate, especially against, Patrick Mahomes.
When you can rush with four guys and you don't have to blitz, and you can allow those guys to play with vision because they play a ton of zone coverage, and the Packers do too.
Yeah,
they can sit back there with their eyes on the quarterback. That helps your corners a whole lot. And again, the Eagles, Cooper DeJean was really good. Quinyon Mitchell was really good. Not taking anything away, but
no,
they get helped a lot by the pass rush.
Right.
And I agree with what you're saying. I have this. Maybe it's like a Debbie Downer mentality, but like I have a worry that they're going to look at this change at defensive line coach and be like, okay, that was the problem. He's going to improve the guys we already have. And we really like the guys we already have because we spent a lot of money and a lot of high draft picks on them. We still really like those guys. So they're going to develop under this new D-line coach, and it won't be such an urgent position for them to upgrade. and we won't see like a big free agent signing. We'll see a draft pick, but it'll be middle round or something like that. We're going to walk out of it and be like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah. But
And
then they'll see addition by the coach, right? And
that's what they're hoping for. And it's like, yeah, the coach can help you, but you also need some better players as well. And I'm worried about that. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but it's just kind of like in the back of my mind, like, don't rely too much on the coaching change to solve all the problems there on the defensive line. They go and get players.
Yeah, and our buddy Chris man, you said it before I could. Goot said we already have the talent in the room. He's blind. What do you think he has? All right, so I'm like in the middle of that, right? Goot did say you've already got the talent in the room, and he's right. I mean, again, like one of the guys is nicknamed Hercules, for crying out loud. Like these guys are crazy. They're big. They're talented. It's there. And you've seen some of them play well. That's where I always fall back on that. Have you seen these guys play well before or not? And a lot of you have. You've seen Carl Brooks play well. You've seen Devontae Wyatt play well. Obviously, we've seen Kenny Clark play well. You've seen these guys play well. So when you've seen them play well and then you see all of them not play well last season, there's a pattern there, right? All of these guys, you saw them play well at some point, and then last season they didn't. All right, well, sorry, coach. Like now I'm looking at you. Like, and I get it all the time on Twitter, guys, well, players got to play. Yeah, but the coaches have a job, right? The coaches have a job to put players in position to be successful. And if you're consistently seeing a group of players not be put in position to be successful, which I would argue that was what happened. I mean, early in the season last year, I was watching, I was like, these guys are getting penetration, but it's getting taken advantage of way too easily. So they were winning matchups, and there were games where you came out and you got 7 sacks, and so that level of inconsistency to me does point back to the coaching. And I'm totally inclined to lean in Goot's direction and go, yeah, Goot knows what the hell he's talking about. If he says the talent's in the room and he's the one who says, get this coach out of here and replace him. Yeah. Hey, in Goot, we trust, man.
I think the talent is in the room, but I also think they need more talent, and they need to be looking down the line to when some of this talent has contracts coming up,
yeah.
So yeah, I think there definitely is talent in the room. You need to get it out of them much more than what we saw in 2024, but you need to add to that talent too. So don't be fooled by just who you have and what you think they could be. Go get more of those guys. Totally agree.
And our friend R. Showers over here going to bat for Slayton, and I feel like I got to somewhat join in on this. He says, look at the old guys we had played well. Sean Jones, Reggie, Peppers. I'm not saying Slayton is that, but he can play well mid and late career. Yeah, I'm certainly not here to say that they would move on from Slayton because he's declined. I mean, he's a young guy, I think, still. Like,
yeah, he's coming off his first contract.
Yeah. So he's still young enough. I think it's just really a matter of, can you replace what he is in the defense with a rookie contract? And I think the overwhelming answer right now is yes. Like, this draft class is loaded with big dudes like him. So he'll play well somewhere. I don't know what he's asking for, but I just got to believe that a rookie's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, and like, he's a fine run defender. He's not going to give you any kind of pass rush.
Yeah,
and that's you need guys like that, right? Like, you need but I think it's going to come down to what the number is, and sometimes those guys get paid more than you realize and that you're expecting. And if he's going to get, and I don't know whatever the number, but if he's going to get $8 million a year, the Packers may be like, that's. I know I'm just throwing it out. Saying it's going to, 6 to 8 million, whatever. They may say, you know what, that's a little more than we want to pay him when we can go in the draft. And, yes, it might take somebody some time to develop, that you draft, but they would look to save some money there because Slayton's giving you production, on first and second down. He's not out there to rush the passer, and he's not even, out there every first and second down, right? He's a run defender first, and that's important. But if you're making 6 to 8 million or whatever he may end up getting, I might be off on those numbers, but I don't think he's not going to make 2 million. He's going to make a lot more than that. So
PFF's got anything in here yet.
Yeah, there might be projections. I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, it's a cost savings thing. And it's, when he's a one-dimensional player that's going to be a little more expensive, they may look to a deep draft, a defensive tackle, and draft his replacement. But I would be fine if they brought him back on a sensible contract. I think he's a valuable player against the run. You got to weigh it against what you're going to see available in the draft. And obviously the contract and the cap is a huge part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just trying to look at the guys that are out there. He's not listed in the top 100 free agents in this list here. But the lower guys on the list, are in the range of like 2 to 3 to 8 million. Jaron Reed, 6 million. There's a range. But yeah, so I mean, if you're getting Slayton back for 2 to 3 million a year, maybe you're taking that. I mean, again, it kind of depends on what you think you're going to get in the draft versus that. Maybe he's hanging out on the market after the draft. You see what you've gotten and you want to bring him back because you didn't get as many bodies as you thought. But yeah, I'm not trying to boot Slayton out of town because I think he's part of the problem on the D line. I'm more looking at him like I just think this draft class makes him way too easy to replace. But yeah, and Chris, you saying all in spurts, no consistency. I got you. And that's again why I point back to the coaching, right? I think coaching is part of the responsibility in coaching is again to set guys up for success, but also to help hone those skills, make them more consistent, and you just didn't see that from this group. And there was too much of a pattern across the players that, it'd be one thing if one guy had a good season and another guy didn't. All right, well, that's one guy's playing well, another guy's not. All of them didn't play well. And that again, that's my biggest red flag for the coaching. And you may come into this season with an entirely new coach and, you still have some issues, but some of them play well. Okay, well, maybe it's not the coaching this time. Maybe some of them do stink, and that's fine. I don't think that you'll be plagued with bad players forever because they got a new coach and think that the problem is solved. But yeah, I think that there's multiple ways to throw solutions at this problem and hopefully solve it next season, right? Hopefully next season you are one of the better pass rush teams in the league. And if you are, back to the root of our question here, I think that is the most impactful addition to the offseason is to improve your pass rush. And in doing that, you improve your defense overall, right? You're going to make your secondary better. You're going to make your linebackers better. Your linebackers, you can already see are pretty good. At least we know Cooper. You obviously have some pretty damn good safeties. If you improve your D-line and your pass rush, I think your corners are going to be all right. You don't necessarily have to have all-world corners in order to have a great defense next season. Now, that's not advocating for not adding to the cornerback room. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But, you have to kind of hedge your bet in places, right? You can't, invest max resources in every direction. You got to make it make sense. So, yeah, man, I think we agree on that, right? You improve that different defensive front seven, say, then everything gets better. We win a Super Bowl, right? That's it. That's simple as that.
Yeah, let's hope so. But yeah, I think we're definitely in agreement. That's number one priority is get a pass rush and improve the D-line.
Absolutely. So now on the same theme, let's go fly around this class of defenders here coming into the draft. An interesting one. We kind of started talking about it a little bit before we went live here. Obviously, we've been gushing about the interior defenders in this one. In case you haven't heard it yet, they're big. There's a lot of them. It's a deep defensive tackle class. Just know that. As long as you know that, you'll be caught up. There's some good pass rushers. This is probably not, the deepest or best pass rusher class, but there's some damn good ones out there that'll be available for the Packers. I don't like that this is a year where you feel like you need a corner because I don't know how much I like this cornerback class. I know there's some that, he could be really good. He's just coming off an injury. I get it. Yeah. I don't like this class very much. I'm
It's
just gonna say it.
it's a weird corner class. Like there's a lot of guys that are coming off injury, and then there's some that are kind of, let's see how tall they are and how much they weigh, sort of thing. Like they're going to fall outside the Packers thresholds that they like. So
Well,
yeah,
just as soon as you see one you like, you realize there's one threshold missing, and you're just going, "Dang, man! Like, okay, well, what do we do with that?" So
it's
I
a
don't
weird
know.
corner class. I think there's some guys there, but I think it's going to be a smaller list of guys at corner that are going to be what, meet everything that the Packers look for in cornerbacks.
Yeah, there will be. I mean, there's not like there's nobody. There's definitely some guys there,
some guys.
and much like some other positions, Goot has found value later in the draft at the defensive back position, cornerback, and safety. So there's potential there, but man, I don't know. Like if they come out of this draft without a corner, it's going to be hard to be mad about that. Because there's other positions of better value, and two, it's just like I don't know. Once you put, like you're saying, once you put them through all the filters and all the criteria, there's actually not that many. There's not that many that the Packers consider draftable.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to draft one or two for sure, just because they need the depth, they need the players. But this might be the position that they attack a little bit in free agency, and then you're looking for like developmental guys at cornerback, right? And like not guys that you need to come in and play a lot of snaps right away. It's guys that you can kind of bring along slowly. Because you're right, I don't know if there's a whole lot of, especially, picking at 23 and lower in each round. Like if I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of guys that really fit what they're looking for. So yeah, it's a weird class at corner. We've talked about the D line and the edge rushers. There's a lot of those guys. There's a ton of, interior defensive linemen. A lot of, most of them are big dudes too, which the Packers like. Yep. I think they're going to be fine there. I think they're going to be able to get D linemen. Edge rushers a little bit. Let's see what some of these guys weigh, because we know they like bigger edge rushers. And also obviously the testing numbers. So I feel really confident defensive tackle. They're going to have some guys available to them. Like there's going to be several that they can pick from. Edge rusher, I think it falls off a little bit, but they should still be okay there getting an edge rusher or two in the draft. And then corner's kind of weird. Like I think it's going to be a smaller list of guys who really fit what they want.
Ooh, and a great question here from Mar Showers. Will lack of available corners save Jair?
No, I don't think they look at it like that. I don't think they look at it like that at all. I think that's a separate. Jair's, I would be shocked if he's on this team next year. Shocked.
I think ours onto something here.
Good as no, I don't think so.
I don't know. I think it's a fantastic question. It's kind of the inverse of what we just said about TJ Slater.
I don't think it has anything. I think they're moving on from him, and I don't think that's going to play into it. I think they're two separate issues.
I think we'll see. I think it's a good question, man. I think any maybe a different offseason, you see more potential to replace a guy like that. But yeah, I don't like the cornerback class. I think it's just fair to say that I don't like this cornerback class. It's not that there's no corners that are going to be good in this class. Obviously, Travis Hunter is up there. I think the idea is that he's going to play corner, and when you're not considering all the criteria that the Packers have, because he only weighs about $185 right now, you can probably get that up there to where they need it to be. But a guy like that, he's going to be good. Travis Hunter's going to be good in the NFL. He's got insane body control. He's just incredibly comfortable just going after the ball, regardless of where he is on, offense, defense, anything. So, yeah, there's going to be guys like that. I'm not saying that, there won't be anybody who's good, but there's just not as many. And especially where the Packers are in this draft, you're not going to get a Travis Hunter. It's not going to happen. Doesn't need to happen.
Right.
That would be kind of foolish, I think. I don't think he's that good. But and then you got your Will Johnson, who obviously hits the size, and he's really good, but he's coming off the injury, right?
Yeah, he had injuries. I mean, he's really good. He was really good in 2023, and then 2024 dealt with some injuries. But again, he's another guy would be surprising if he made it to 23.
Yeah, he's pretty high up there, so it's not like that's one who's really on your radar anyway. So when you start getting further down, and then you start looking at these guys, you're like, yeah, there's some guys, but you're Benjamin Morrison right on the edge at 190, and then that's kind of where you start getting in this game of guys like, well, he's not very tall, he's not very big, is he any good? Hey, he's all right.
And I like Morrison. But again, yeah, he's 190, so let's see what he weighs. But he's coming off a hip injury that cost him a lot of games. So, like, how serious is that? Like, is there long-lasting effects from that hip injury? Like, we don't see the Packers usually take guys like that in the first round.
Right, right.
And I was just going to bring up
what I was going to say is when you're looking at this and you're going, well, we kind of like this guy, but he's really kind of close to our size threshold. And then you like turn the page and you go, wow, there's 3 guys there that are 320 pounds and can run under a 540. Holy crap. All right, let's, you eventually stop making those concessions. Like, this guy's freaking massive and hits our criteria like out of the park. And then this guy over here, like, he's kind of good at football, but he's really struggling to meet these criteria that we've set for a reason. That's where I think they're not going to make those concessions.
No, I agree with you. And when some of those guys are injured too, that's another huge factor. And Morrison's had apparently two hip surgeries. So that's not a good sign. And then then the kid from East Carolina, Ravel, really good player. He's going to be big enough, but he tore his ACL. So he's coming off an ACL. And yes, players recover from ACLs a lot quicker, but do you want to invest a first-round pick on a guy coming off an ACL injury? Maybe this will be the year that the Packers do something like that, but they haven't traditionally done anything like that. Right. He may be fine for the rest of his career and never have another knee injury, but we haven't seen them take a risk like that, that early in the draft. So it's, hard to envision them doing it this time.
Well, and if you're a Packers fan, I don't know that you're rooting for that because here we are. The root of most of our conversations about these things is, guys that can't get on the field. Jair can't get on the field. Christian Watson's made of glass, and Jordan Morgan's a terrible pick because he got hurt. Like, all these guys, it's like you're mad because they got hurt. And coming out of school, really, injuries weren't their issue, so you did the best you could to not have that happen. Let's not dabble around with these guys that are already in it. So I agree, man. I just think that you're going to there's just too much there where it's like, you just don't need to do that. Don't need to do it. Why would you do it?
I think the prospects are much cleaner from a medical standpoint at defensive tackle. And it's just deeper there.
It's deeper. A lot of these guys have a lot of snaps too. So they've proven, the endurance side of the game. I mean, it's an impressive class. And again, if you can get a guy, at pick 23 or second round, wherever, who would normally be a half a round earlier, maybe a full round earlier, you have to jump on that. You have to, you can't. It was kind of like we were talking about last year with the receivers, right? And I was really particularly going off for Brian Thomas Jr. And now it's like, see, that guy should have been in like the top 5, top 10 of the draft. This year, Brian Thomas Jr. would be in the top 5 of the draft. He would be the number 1 receiver coming out of this draft. No Tet McMillan, none of that. BTJ would be head and shoulders number 1 receiver in this draft. So when you could have gotten a guy like that, in the second half of the first round last year, it really starts to put things into perspective. And I guarantee you, GMs and scouts are thinking that way. You have to think about how these guys translate to the game. And you don't really get as much caught up into comparing the class to itself as much as comparing the class to what do you think they're capable of, just period, and I think it's harder for media, and even the experts out there, like we talk about Brugler and some of these other guys, I think it's harder for them to do that kind of an evaluation than it is for the teams. The teams can have these blinders on. They've got data on data on data from years and years and years. There's a lot more information that they have to work with. So that's why I think you end up with teams having boards that look a way that you know make you scratch your head like, oh no, that's not where I had that guy graded. And it's like, yeah, well, they've got a lot more information than you do. So
yeah,
you know,
exactly. And I think some of the information we're going to get coming up at the scouting combine, especially for, we keep talking about defensive tackles, edge rushers. It's going to be really interesting because there's going to be a lot of guys that test well that are going to be athletic freaks. And that's what the Packers like. Like, they're going to take athletic freaks. Don't worry. Don't go looking at their box score and see that they had 4 sacks in college. Like, that's not a position where they really care that much about production. They want big athletic dudes. Some positions they do want production. Receivers, one of them. But when we're talking D linemen and edge rushers, they want big dudes that are athletic freaks because that's what you can develop. And usually those are the guys with the best sack numbers, the best pressure numbers,
right?
The ones that are game wreckers. So that's what they're looking for. And I think, coming up in the scouting combine here in the next week or two, watch and see how these guys test, because that's really going to show you who's going to be on the Packers board.
Yeah, no, I think so. And and ours on it right here. He's got a good one. You know who I would like to see us draft is Gadsden from Syracuse. Use him split out like a big slot, and that's a Osindi, I believe. I think he's Aronde.
His dad played.
Aronde Gadsden.
Yeah.
He had an excellent Shrine Bowl. Did not even play in the Shrine Bowl game because he did well during the week and the coach just shut him down. So yeah, he's a sneaky one that I think you could get on day 3, but very athletic, especially for his size. He would be an excellent addition to the offense, no doubt about it. You can definitely get him at a valuable spot later on. But yeah, it's guys like that, like what you're saying, Tim, like some athletic freaks, guys that can really get going. One that I've got on my radar right now that I think after the combine, I don't know what his numbers will be. He looks athletic to me, but I would imagine with good combine numbers, he might jump up. But right now, he's projected around that 60 overall range, somewhere in the second round. But it's defensive tackle Derek Harmon out of Oregon. He's 6'5", 310, listed by PFF. I don't know if we'll find out from the combine what he really is, but big athletic guy. And one stat that the Packers do probably take more serious or maybe weight heavier than others is hurries. And this guy's got a lot of hurries. He had 43 hurries last season. And then, you go look at other guys, interior defenders coming out, and they got 15, 20, 25. So you look at his the hurries. And to be fair, so let's go to the top here. Mason Graham, he had 20 hurries this season in 2024. It's a good season. He was graded by PFF 91 overall. That's elite. 5 sacks, 20 hurries, 9 hits. You go down to Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon had 43 hurries, 5 sacks, 7 hits. A very similar season to, statistically, to the top guy on the board. Not graded quite as high, 83.9 by PFF. So you got to dig into that. But that's a guy that right now I'm looking at, and I look at him on film, and I'm going, I think he's rated a little bit too low. And what's going to happen is because you have so many of these guys coming from all different directions, some guys are going to slip down a little bit. Think Devontae Adams in 2014. Yeah. You remember that? That was a loaded class. But yeah, right. So that's one guy that's got my attention.
And Brugler has him rated 19th overall right now.
Oh, Brugler does?
Brugler, yeah, he really likes him. And it's interesting you bring him up because I was just looking at something today. It's Oregon, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. All those teams have multiple defensive linemen / edge rushers that are going to be first and second day picks. So anybody wants to go out and do some research, watch those 3 teams. Like Georgia every year, you can say that they have all the defensive linemen, but Oregon, Texas A&M, Ole Miss are loaded with guys. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Packers end up with 1 or 2 of the D linemen from those programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just throwing it out there.
Yep. No, and it's good to watch these patterns, and one guy I did get to talk to while I got to talk to a couple of these guys. CJ West was one that I got to talk to at the Shrine Bowl. Nice dude. Did talk to the Packers. Jordan Phillips was one. Big dude, 6'3", 320. He can move. I mean, these guys they're huge. What was the other one I was just looking for? The Georgia guys. I think it was Nazir Stackhouse that I got to talk with, and he's a character, big dude, can move, probably a day 3 type guy, but he's from Georgia, and so there's definitely some things to watch there. If you can find a Georgia guy, right now Nazir Stackhouse, he's a little further back. He's probably a day 3 guy. He's got a lot of snaps, right? I mean, 400 plus snaps over the last 3 seasons, each season. Again, 6'3", 320. There's some guys that in any other season, they're not going to be available on day 3, so I think that's where you're just going to see too much value in these guys, and it's going to be hard for the Packers to resist. So overall, it's going to be an interesting class for the defense. But I definitely like the defense more than I like the offense. Linebackers, I haven't put as much into, but I'll take a shot at a few of them that I like. One was Chris Paul Jr. He was also at the Shrine Bowl. There's something about some guys they just look like leaders. I don't know what how to really put my finger on it, but the way that he carried himself, he just looked like a dude that hey, that guy knows what's going on. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to listen to that guy. I can't put my finger on it, but Chris Paul looks like a dude that is going to be a fantastic leader in the NFL. He looks like a guy who just knows what's going on. He's got his stuff together. He's an excellent athlete. Plays well. I mean, he's a fun one to watch. You go watch his film. He's solid. He had a really good season, graded 87.2 by PFF in 2024. A little bit undersized at 6'1", but he's one of those guys that you watch him and you just don't see that. You don't really see that he's undersized. He looks like a dude who was always going to be where he's supposed to be. And there's something to be said for that. He's one I like, but I feel like this is a pretty decent linebacker class. Last year, there were a few, and then it really dropped off. There's some depth to this linebacker class, and it'd be interesting to see how the Packers approach this one, because they already do have some good linebackers. But we've talked about Quay Walker's coming up. You got to figure out what you're going to do with him. Goody sounded really optimistic about him in his end of season press conference, but we have seen how that can go. But they did meet with several guys at the Shrine Bowl, linebackers. One of the other guys that they met with that I did get to talk to is a kid from UCLA. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name at this point, but not Swessinger. It was his teammate, but he was at the Shrine Bowl. And he's one that I believe spent some extra time with the Packers. He had a really good Shrine Bowl. But yeah, so overall, there's no secrets to this draft class on defense. It aligns well with what the Packers need help with, which is a pass rush, right? And you can do that from a big old mean guy in the middle to a freak of an athlete on the outside. There are 2 ways to approach it, and you can do both of those things in this draft. You can go get both of those types of guys in this draft. And that's to me, that's where it ends. There's some good safeties in this draft. You don't need any safeties. I would be very surprised if they came out of safeties or out of this draft with any safeties. Beyond that, maybe you get some value at linebacker. As much as we all probably want another nice stud cornerback, I don't see it in this draft. I just don't see it lining up. I think that there's too much value at other positions when the Packers are on the board than what you see at corner. So who knows? I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'm not some all-knowing guru, but that's my thought on the draft class. What do you think, man? What did we miss?
No, I think you covered it. I'm not looking at safeties. I'm not concerned about safeties because they drafted them and signed McKinney last year. So not one that I'm worried about. I think linebacker, yeah, there might be some guys that are value there, but Cooper's got to be on the field every down. They like Quay a lot. We got to find out about Tyron Hopper, who barely played at all last year. If they take one, fine, but I wouldn't expect it to be early in the draft. And yeah, I think corner. I think they need to take corners. You got to at least improve the depth. But I think it's, with the guys coming off injuries and some size questions, to take one on the first 2 days, I think their list is going to be pretty small at quarterback. So maybe one falls to them, right, and it breaks right for them, and they take one. But I think it might be a small list for them unless they're willing to take a risk on a guy coming off injury. But yeah, I think it sets up for D-line and edge rusher early and often in the draft.
And that is a good thing, Packers fans.
Yes.
Okay.
You can never have enough.
If that front seven is big and mean, it makes the secondary look a lot better. It's just true. So you fix one, you improve another, and that's the way I look at it. So we're going to have some fun. And, we got the scouting combine coming up next week. And then after that, leading up to the draft every week, we are going to break down a couple different position groups. So you guys have a better understanding of who maybe is a better fit for the Packers. Who are they targeting? Who doesn't fit their criteria, when it comes down to it. Hey, this guy looks good. Why wouldn't the Packers draft him? Well, if he's 180 pounds, they might not take him, that kind of stuff. Try to hone in the radar, right? We're not going to tell you who's going to get picked where. We're not some crystal ball gurus. That's weird stuff. We're just going to hone in on who looks like a Packers guy at each position and help you guys have a better understanding of the names flying around on draft day. But for this evening, for right now, thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Most importantly, jump on over to that Packers Talk YouTube channel, hit subscribe, hit that little bell next to it, get the notification when we stream live, and we greatly appreciate that. That helps us out a lot. Love hanging out with you guys every week. We're going to have some fun this offseason. We are going to build the 60th Super Bowl champion, y'all. The 60th Super Bowl champion is going to be the Packers. We're building them. We're doing it right here all offseason with you guys, having some fun. And until next week, Packers fans,